The fluorescent lights of the trauma bay burned my eyes. The heart monitor beside my bed beeped in a frantic, irregular rhythm that echoed against the sterile white walls. Blood soaked through the thin hospital sheets, heavy and warm against my skin. A ruptured ectopic pregnancy? The surgeon shouted medical terms at the nurses rushing around my gurney, their hands pressing down on my abdomen in a desperate attempt to stop the internal bleeding. My vision blurred. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I grabbed my cell phone from the metal tray next to my pillow. My hand shook so violently the plastic case clattered against the table. I found my mother's name in my contacts and pressed the green button. The line rang once before dropping into voicemail. Call declined. I swallowed the rising panic in my throat and dialed my sister. One ring. Call declined. The screen lit up a moment later. A new text message appeared. Stop being dramatic. We are at the massage pavilion. You are ruining our vibe. A second notification popped up immediately after. Instagram. I tapped the screen with a trembling thumb. It was a fresh photo of my mother and sister clinking champagne flutes beside a turquoise resort pool in Sedona. The caption read, "Living our best life." Paid for entirely with my platinum credit card. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. The anesthesia mask clamped over my nose. The chemical smell flooding my lungs, and everything went black. I woke up in the intensive care unit. The rhythmic hiss of a ventilator filled the quiet room. A dull, throbbing ache radiated from my stomach, grounding me in the reality that I had survived the surgery. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling tiles. My throat felt like it was coated in dry sand. A nurse stood beside my bed, adjusting an intravenous line taped to my forearm. Her name tag read, Clara. She had kind, tired eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen absolute devastation and still decided to show up and care. She offered me a cup of ice chips. I let the freezing water melt on my tongue and stared at the blank wall opposite my bed. The physical agony of my failing body was sharp, but the absolute silence from my phone was sharper. I had almost died on that operating table. I had bled out on a gurney while the two women who were supposed to be my family were getting deep tissue massages on my dime. My mind flashed back to the reality of my life. I was 34 years old, the owner of a thriving local bakery, and the designated bank for a family of parasites. I had spent my entire adult life buying their love. I woke up at 4 o'clock every morning, my hands covered in flour and my back aching, just to pay the $85,000 annual lease for their luxury downtown condominium. I funded this $15,000 Sedona wellness retreat because my sister, Brooke, claimed she was suffering from severe influencer burnout. She had never worked a real job in her life. Her entire existence was unboxing designer bags online and pretending she was wealthy. My mother, Catherine, cheered her on, constantly reminding me that family supports family. But family, it turned out, only supported family when the money flowed in one direction. My brother, Trevor, was the only one who warned me. He was a blue-collar mechanic, covered in motor oil and honesty. He told me I was funding my own disrespect. I never listened. I always believed that if I was useful enough, they would eventually love me. Trevor walked through the heavy hospital doors, his heavy work boots squeaking on the linoleum floor. He still wore his stained coveralls from the garage. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He pulled a cheap vinyl chair to the edge of my bed and took my hand. His rough, calloused fingers grounded me to reality. He did not ask how much the hospital room cost. He did not complain about his ruined schedule. He just sat down and stayed. I looked at Trevor. And then I looked at the dark screen of my phone resting on the tray table. The grief hardened into pure, cold ice. I was done bleeding for people who only loved my wallet. Lying in that bed, with the monitors tracking my fragile heartbeat, I refused to cry. I pulled up my banking application. My thumb hovered over the screen. I saw the pending charges from the resort rolling in real time. $400 for room service, $200 for poolside cocktails, $600 for spa treatments. I tapped the security settings menu, deactivate card. A warning prompt appeared asking if I was sure. I pressed confirm. The screen loaded, and the green check mark flashed. The financial umbilical cord was officially severed. I set the phone face down and closed my eyes. The panic would hit them soon. Hours later, my phone vibrated. Brooke, I let it ring out. It vibrated again. Catherine, I let it ring. Finally, on the sixth call, I answered. I did not say hello. Brooke's voice shrieked through the speaker, breathless and furious. She demanded to know why the card had declined in front of the entire resort lobby. She said the concierge looked at her like she was a criminal. She complained that they had to leave their luggage at the front desk. She did not ask if I survived the surgery. She did not ask if I was in pain. She ordered me to fix the glitch because I was embarrassing her brand. I let her finish her tantrum. I listened to every entitled, venomous word. Then I spoke. My voice was raspy, stripped of any warmth or hesitation. I told her the card was dead. I told her I was cutting her off. She laughed, a harsh, ugly sound, and told me to stop playing games. I ended the call. I pulled up my luxury building's resident portal application. I owned the lease to their condominium. I paid the exorbitant early termination penalty fee up front from my personal savings account. Completely wiping out the contract, I drafted a quick email to the leasing office, authorizing Trevor as my legal proxy to clear out the unit. I looked at Trevor sitting beside me. I told him to go to the apartment. I told him to take the custom sectional sofa, the flat screen televisions, the imported dining table, and every single piece of furniture I had ever purchased. He smiled, a dark, satisfying grin, and grabbed his truck keys. Over the next 48 hours, while Brooke and Catherine were stranded in Arizona, desperately trying to find a cheap bus ticket back home with dead cards, Trevor systematically dismantled their luxurious lie. By the time they returned, the apartment was completely empty. The lease was voided. Building security denied them entry at the front desk. They were homeless. Weeks passed. The physical scars on my stomach began to heal, turning from angry red to a dull pink. I was back at my bakery, wiping down the marble countertops and organizing the morning pastry display. The bell above the glass door chimed. Brooke and Catherine walked in. They looked exhausted. Catherine wore a wrinkled blouse. Brooke's oversized designer sunglasses could not hide the dark circles under her eyes. They approached the counter with fake tears and hollow apologies. Catherine reached out to touch my hand, swearing they misunderstood the severity of the hospital visit. She said the cell service in the mountains was bad. She said they were worried sick. Brooke nodded aggressively, offering a tight, forced smile, promising that things would be different if I just turned the accounts back on. I stepped back from the counter. I wiped my hands with a damp towel and stared at them. I gave them absolutely nothing. No anger. No forgiveness. I told them to leave the store before I called the police for trespassing. They cursed at me. their true colors bleeding through the fake apologies, and stormed out. It felt like the end of the war. It was just the calm before the final strike. Brooke had a ticking clock. She had publicly promised her internet followers a sponsored, month-long luxury content trip to Dubai. She had put down a massive non-refundable deposit weeks ago, assuming my platinum card would cover the remaining balance. With my money gone, her fake empire was collapsing. Her creditors were threatening to expose her online as a fraud. A few days after they showed up at the bakery, my credit monitoring application sent a blaring notification to my phone. Someone was applying for a $50,000 personal loan using my Social Security number. Because I had placed a hard fraud freeze on my credit files from the intensive care unit, the bank required an in-person notary verification to release any funds. Brooke was desperate. She assumed I was still weak, recovering at home, entirely disconnected from the world. She dug up an old, legitimate medical proxy document I had signed years ago when I had my wisdom teeth removed. She used a cheap document editor on her laptop to alter the dates. She paid a shady online notary to stamp the file. She forged my signature to claim I was physically incapacitated and she had legal control of my finances. She was calculating enough to steal. But she was arrogant enough to leave a massive digital paper trail. I did not confront her. I did not send a warning text. I drove straight to the hospital. I found Nurse Clara at the nurse's station. I sat down with her and the hospital's on-call social worker. We drafted an official document stating I was fully lucid, physically capable, and legally revoking Brooke's emergency contact status forever. Clara signed it as a witness. The social worker stamped it with the hospital seal. I forwarded the entire file directly to the bank's fraud department manager, warning them of the incoming forgery. Then, I waited. I let Brooke walk right into the trap. Brooke strutted into the bank branch later that afternoon. She was dressed in a silk blouse I had paid for months ago, projecting absolute confidence. She presented the forged medical proxy to the loan officer, demanding the $50,000 be wired immediately. The bank manager smiled politely, took the paperwork, and stepped into the back office. He hit the silent alarm. Brooke stood in the lobby, tapping her manicured nails on the marble counter, completely oblivious to her impending ruin. 5 minutes later, the heavy glass doors of the bank slid open. 2 uniformed police officers flanked her. The color completely drained from her face. Her jaw dropped open. The officers grabbed her wrists and twisted them behind her back. The steel handcuffs clicked shut. The loud, metallic snap echoed through the quiet lobby. Customers gasped. People raised their cell phones to record. Brooke twisted and thrashed, screaming that there was a huge mistake, that she was a wealthy influencer, that they were ruining her Dubai trip. The officers calmly read her rights and shoved her into the back of a squad car. She was arrested for felony bank fraud and felony identity theft. That evening, my phone rang. It was Catherine. She was hysterical, sobbing so hard she was choking on her own breath. She begged me for bail money. She screamed that Brooke was sitting in a concrete holding cell. Terrified and crying, she demanded I fix this, claiming it was just a misunderstanding. Just family, taking care of family when times were tough. I leaned against the warm oven in my bakery. I breathed in the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon. I spoke softly, my voice perfectly steady. I told her I would love to help, but she had maxed out her allowance in Sedona. I told her to stop ruining my vibe. Then I hung up the phone. The line went dead. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The consequences were immediate and absolute. Brooke faced federal felony charges. The judge ordered her to surrender her passport immediately. She was legally barred from accessing any social media platforms while out on bail, entirely erasing her digital existence. Her internet followers forgot her in a week. Catherine broke and locked out of the luxury condominium, was forced to move into a cheap residential motel on the edge of town. She had to take a minimum wage job scanning groceries to afford her weekly rent. The parasites were excised from my life. I sent a massive gourmet gift basket and a handwritten thank you note to Nurse Clara and the entire intensive care ward. Then I took the business capital I used to waste on my toxic family and redirected it to loyalty. I co-signed the commercial lease for Trevor's new independent mechanic shop. I bought him his first hydraulic vehicle lift. He stood in the middle of his own garage, wiping grease off his hands, looking around with tears in his eyes. He hugged me, tight and real. The money was finally flowing toward love, not entitlement. I am standing in my bakery now, watching the morning sun spill across the wooden floors. The chaos of the past year has faded into complete stillness. The judge did not hesitate when he brought the gavel down on Brooke's case. He sentenced her to 6 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 4 years. The court ordered full restitution of any stolen funds and slapped her with massive legal fines. Our community found out. The church gossip circles tore Catherine apart. The neighbors whispered every time she walked to the bus stop. The shame stripped them of everything they valued. They lost their reputation, their comfort, and their freedom. 3 months into her sentence, Brooke tried to reach out. The state prison mailed a standard white envelope to my bakery. The handwriting was hers, frantic and messy. She wrote pages about how sorry she was, how she did it because she was sick with stress, how she was still my sister and we needed to heal. I stood by the trash can behind the counter. I read the first line. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pity. I felt absolutely nothing. I dropped the letter into the garbage and walked away. My life is completely different now. My chosen family fills the void my biological relatives left behind. Trevor comes by the bakery every Sunday morning with black coffee. My friends from the neighborhood sit at the corner tables, laughing and sharing stories about their lives. There is no tension in my shoulders. There is no unspoken demand for my wallet every time someone says my name. There is only mutual respect and genuine care. Looking back at the girl bleeding on the hospital gurney, I realized something profound about how we are wired. Strong people, the eldest daughters, the reliable providers. We develop a massive martyr complex. We buy love because we are terrified we will not receive it otherwise. We believe that if we are useful, we will never be abandoned. Narcissists rely entirely on this terror. They consume your resources and convince you it is a privilege to serve them. To a parasite, the host cutting off the blood supply feels like an unprovoked act of violence. But it is not violence. It is survival. I survived. And I walked away with 3 absolute truths that govern my life today. First, blood does not make you family. Loyalty does. Sharing DNA is a biological accident. Showing up when the hospital machines are beeping. When there is absolutely nothing to gain and everything to lose is a choice. You owe nothing to people who only remember your name when they need a favor. Second, stop funding your own disrespect. Every dollar, every hour, every ounce of emotional energy you give to someone who devalues you is a down payment on your own misery. You are financing your own destruction. The moment you stop paying for their comfort, you will see exactly how much they actually value your presence. Third, true boundaries do not require an argument. They require an action. You do not have to scream at a toxic person to make them understand. You do not have to craft the perfect text message to explain your feelings. You just have to let the paperwork, the locked doors, and the police do the talking. Silence and legal consequences are the only language they truly respect. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Trust is earned, not owed. Have you ever realized your family valued what you provided more than they valued your life? Have you ever had to cut the financial cord to save your own soul? If you have, tell me in the comments below. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for protecting yourself from people who wanted to drain you. Subscribe to the channel, because the people who quietly hold everyone else together deserve to be heard. You deserve to be held. My name is Vanessa, and for the first time in my entire life, I am free. That was a heavy one. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are asking, why did Vanessa wait so long? Why did she keep paying $85,000 a year for a luxury apartment for people who would not even pick up the phone while she was bleeding out? How could a smart, capable business owner be so blind? Let me stop you right there. Vanessa was not blind, and she certainly was not stupid. She was trapped in a psychological cycle known as intermittent reinforcement. I like to call it the slot machine effect. Think about it. A slot machine does not pay out every time you pull the lever. It gives you nothing. 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 And then suddenly, a few shiny coins. Just enough to keep you pulling. Toxic families operate the exact same way. They give you a lifetime of neglect. But just when you are exhausted and ready to walk away, they toss you a crumb of hope, a fake smile, a hollow compliment over a family dinner. They call you the strong one. Vanessa was addicted to those crumbs. She was pulling the lever over and over, paying for Sedona resort trips and signing luxury leases, hoping that this time the machine would finally pay out in genuine love. But when the machine broke down while she was fighting for her life in the intensive care unit, Vanessa woke up, and the way she handled the aftermath is an absolute masterclass in financial self-defense. Let us break down her smart moves. First, she applied the immediate financial tourniquet. She did not call her mother to scream, and she did not beg her sister for an apology. She simply opened her banking application and deactivated the platinum card. Toxic dependents thrive on drama, but they absolutely panic in the face of swift, silent action. Second, she executed the buyout. Instead of fighting an ugly, drawn-out eviction battle or arguing over who owned the furniture, she used her own savings to pay the lease termination penalty. She legally surrendered the apartment out from under them. Sometimes you have to invest your own capital to permanently buy your freedom and permanently close the door. Third, she built an airtight case. When her sister tried to commit identity theft to secure a $50,000 loan, Vanessa did not send an angry text message. She went directly to the hospital, social worker, secured a legally witnessed revocation of her medical proxy, and forwarded that evidence straight to the bank fraud department. She let her sister walk right into a federal felony trap. She did not argue. She let the paperwork do the talking. Here is the final verdict. Your money, your time, and your emotional energy are privileges, not rights. If someone treats you like an automated teller machine, you have every right to shut down the account. Stop financing your own disrespect. Have you ever been trapped in a family slot machine? Did you ever have to execute a financial buyout just to save your own peace of mind? Drop your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival and strategy. Protect your peace. And remember, Your worth is not defined by what you can provide. See you in the next one.